It is World Communion Sunday, which means, among other things, Christians around the world will be coming to the Lord's table today. So, of course, we will all be invited to come to this table. When I say all, I mean all, even Australians. If you want to participate in this table, eat this bread, drink the cup, you are welcome to come to the table of grace, no matter your age, your church affiliation, or anything else. You are invited. But World Communion Sunday is more than an event of bread and juice being served across the globe. It's a reminder of what it means to be church, all of us together. You know, one of the first things people noticed about early Christians is that they ate together. Everybody ate together. It's not common in many cultures for everyone to eat together. I don't know how we learn that, but we learn it early, and it shows up in the school cafeteria, doesn't it? There are assigned seats in the cafeteria. Not literally assigned seats, but there are assigned seats. It's kind of like church that way. I kind of know where you're going to sit for the most part, and when you switch it up, it confuses me. You know, no names are written on pews or tables, but people tend to know, don't they? We're creatures of habit. Now, the cafeteria is the place where you eat with friends and sometimes where you refuse to eat with other folks. In my high school, the cool kids ate in the courtyard. I was not there. The athletes ate right by the kitchen doors. I was not there. I ate with a small group in the middle of the cafeteria. We were kind of in an acting class together and with a few others. Now, in my elementary school, we sat by class, but we still sat with our friends in our little cliques, and we would talk about what, our parents packed us for lunch and complain and those kind of things. Now, eating is a physical reality, but there is something spiritual about eating together. When we eat together, we create connection, we build community. So when we eat, we pay attention to who is at the table with us. The first thing that people noticed about the followers of Jesus is they ate together. It would be like going to the school cafeteria and finding all the students sitting at one big table, like one big family, the athletes, the nerds, the theater kids, the cool kids, the goth kids, the geek kids, all together. People noticed. Why did they notice that? Because it was unusual. Every society in its own way figures out how to segregate the cafeteria. There's upstairs and downstairs, like on Downton Abbey. There are separate lunch counters by race, as was the case not that long ago in our own country. But with the church, when the church ate, they ate together. Of course, this practice wasn't easy, which is why we have this passage Paul wrote in the first letter to the Corinthians. Paul was warning them about not discerning the body and eating and drinking judgment on themselves. It sounds like they are not pure enough or worthy to come to the table. It sounds like Paul is saying, you must make sure you are pure enough to come to the Lord's table. But that's not it. That is precisely not it. No one comes to this table because they are worthy. We only come to this table because there is an invitation with our name on it. We come because we are hungry for the love that is served here. And we come because we are invited. This table is free. The love proclaimed here includes all. You can't disqualify yourself from this table, and you can't disqualify anyone else. Now, in Corinth, the Lord's Supper was a meal, not just symbolic expression like we do with a small bit of bread and a little bit of cup, but it was a real full meal, and that was good. But Paul was upset with them because when they gathered to eat the meal, those who arrived first would eat all the food, and those who came later, there was no place for them at the table, and there was nothing to eat. That's not church. That's when Paul goes crazy. He says you can't engage in the practice that says we all belong to one another while at the same time leave people out. Don't you understand? You are the body of Christ. How can you leave out parts of the body? Now, why is this so important to the early church? Because it was so important to Jesus. Jesus knows that eating together is a spiritual practice. The first church I served in a small town of Delavan, Illinois, we had a stop sign in town. That's it, a stop sign. Now I noticed, you think I'm kidding, sometimes there was a tree in the middle of the road at Christmas time. You could go right in the main road because there weren't any cars, because we only had a stop sign. Now, I noticed, though, there were many people in town that would always have to eat alone. There are people who couldn't afford healthy, good food. There were many widows and widowers. There were people in this small town who lived there all their lives that still didn't know each other. And so our church decided to offer a free meal on the fourth Monday of the month and invite everyone, invite the whole town, come and eat. Now, the session wasn't sure people were going to come to this meal, but they begrudgingly said sure because I was new and they didn't want to say no to everything I suggested early on. So we had this meal, and people came. People who never sat with each other before, people who didn't know each other, from the wealthy part of town, from the poor part of town, from the Methodist church, the Baptist church. All these people came and ate together. And a man who I'd seen at the food bank nearly every week came up to me after one of the meals, and he said he never imagined he'd be eating with some of the people in that room, that he'd be invited to eat for free without any strings attached, no expectations, that he'd be allowed to eat with us even though he didn't go to our church, didn't contribute, he didn't know any of us, but it meant the world to him. See, when the church eats, we eat together. And people notice. That's the promise of World Communion Sunday. This table proclaims the love of Jesus is free and it is for all. It claims us by name. This means it's not communion unless you find your place at the table. For everyone born, there's a place at the table. Sadly, churches haven't always lived out this truth. Many years ago, my favorite preacher, Fred Craddock, was a young preacher out of seminary, and he served a beautiful small church of wonderful people in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. At that time, Oak Ridge was rapidly expanding. Lots of new people were moving into the town as the construction industry boomed. Now, many of the newcomers lived near the church in mobile homes and trailers and lean-tos filled with young children and large families. And Fred saw all these new people and thought his church ought to reach out to them. They need a place to worship. They need community. So at the next board meeting, he recommended a plan to reach out to the newcomers. Here is our mission. We need to welcome them into our church family. "Oh, I don't think so," the chairman replied. "They won't fit in. After all, they're just here temporarily. They're not really our kind of people. There's not really a place for them here." Now, Fred was surprised. Well, they may be here temporarily. They may be different from us, but they need the gospel. They need a church. They need a community. Isn't the love of God for all? And the meeting lasted a long time. Another meeting was called the following week, and at that meeting, a resolution was presented to the church board. "I move that in order to be a member of this church, your family has to own property in the county." The motion passed unanimously once Fred was reminded that he didn't get a vote. "There's just no place for them here," the chairman said. 20 years later, Fred and his wife Nettie were driving nearby and decided to stop by the church for old time's sake. It took a while to find it. Lots of new homes at Interstate 40 had been built, but they finally found the country road, and nestled in the pines, the beautiful white frame church was sitting there just as always, except now there was a big parking lot out front full of cars and trucks and motor homes and even motorcycles. And as they pulled into the lot, they saw a big sign in front of the church. It said, "Barbecue, all you can eat. Chicken, ribs, pork." They went inside, and the place was packed with all kinds of people, white and black and Hispanic, rich and poor, Southerners and Northerners. And Fred said to his wife, "Well, now there's finally a place at the table for everyone." It took the church closing for the building to finally be welcoming. Isn't that sad? to keep some folks out who want to know and follow Christ. To deny them a place at the table is not being the church, even if we think we're trying to protect the purity of the church or believe we can identify who is worthy or not. That's not our job. See, in church, we know a few things about ourselves. We know that our causes are never as pure as we think they are. We're never as right as we think we are. And we know that our enemies are never as evil as we tend to make them out to be. And we know that when the sun has set and our work is done, the lives we offer to God will be a mixed bag. None of us comes to the table because we are worthy. We come not because of anything in us. We come because of the grace in Christ. We come because we are invited. We come because Jesus has a habit of wanting to eat with anyone and everyone. And we actually know a good bit about Jesus' eating habits. And he was criticized for who he was willing to eat with, particularly when he ate with tax collectors, who were the most hated and reviled people in all of Israel. Now, Matthew was a tax collector. He had wealth and he had power. What he didn't have was community. Everyone hated him. No one called him by name. Do you know how important calling someone by name is? Lately, I've been taking Gilby, my son, on these long walks, and Verity likes to come with us and teach Gilby everything she knows and is learning at schools. She taught him everything she knows about the body, the muscular system, the skeletal system, the heart, all of that. And the other day, she taught him something really important she learned at her school, Logos Academy down in Harrisburg. She said, Gilby, it's really important to know someone's name and to get their name right, to ask them how they say their name. Because if you call someone by the wrong name or you mispronounce it, that hurts them because they don't feel that you know them and you care about them. She said, Gilby, you need to know people's names and call them by name. She's smarter than I was back then. It's an important lesson. To call someone by name is to show respect and welcome and love. No one called Matthew by name. He was just a tax collector. He goes to the market, he goes to the synagogue, he goes to the street. No one calls his name. He's just a tax collector. But when Jesus says, Matthew, there is a place for you at my table, could we eat together? That's a powerful moment. You know, Mark's gospel tells this same story. And what's interesting is Mark's gospel was actually written first. Matthew basically copies Mark's gospel word for word. His version is the same as Mark's version, except there's a one-word change. In Mark's gospel, the tax collector's name is Levi. Matthew changes the name. I wonder if he changes the name, and I wonder if he inserts his own name in here because this says, this is my story too. I know this kind of love that calls and invites me by name. I know this kind of grace that includes me and includes all. This is my story too. Matthew found his name in God's story. I wonder if you have. We all need that. And that is the gospel message. You are called by name to the table where love is served. And maybe your faith is strong today. Or maybe you're not even sure what you believe at all. It doesn't matter. Come anyway. And maybe life is good for you now. Or perhaps you feel like the wheels have fallen off. It's okay. Come anyway. This table's for you. And maybe you are at the top of your game now, or maybe you are battling guilt or disappointment or stress. That doesn't matter. We come not because of anything in us, not because of any situation we are in or aren't in. We come because of grace in Jesus Christ. We don't come because of what is in us. We come because we are invited. We are called by name. And what evidently Jesus is hungry for is to be at the table with you. It's not the Lord's table unless you are here. So I hope you know and believe that there is a place for you and me and them all here. Jesus calls you by name and says, I want to eat with you. For everyone born, there's a place at the table.